Thank you. Thanks, Mel. It's great to be here. It's lovely to be working with our colleagues from the CES, and it's lovely to be in Belfast. It's my second trip to Belfast. It's great to be back. You're probably thinking, why are we here? So how about we start just talking a little bit about that, and then set out the sort of plan for the day and some of the things that we're planning to share with you and some of the things that we'd like to do with you today. I think it's true to say that parenting is seen increasingly as being very critical to children's outcomes and children's well-being. Governments are recognising it. Governments at all levels are recognising it. All across the world, governments are recognising that parents and parenting are important for children's outcomes, and that it makes sense to be focusing on how best can we support parents, how best can we support families in raising their children. Yet working with parents is not always easy. There are traps for the unwary. It can be hard working with parents. So even once we're committed to the idea of working with parents, then we often encounter challenges in that. Challenges in engaging parents, challenges in helping parents change, challenges in raising issues and concerns with parents and developing effective relationships with parents. It can be a tricky business. So when we were talking about what might be best to offer you guys or to share with you guys, given the sort of diversity of programs and roles you're involved in, we thought that it might be useful just to spend some time talking about and thinking about sort of what the latest research is saying about parenting, about the impacts of parenting on children, what influences parenting, how does parenting develop, and also how is effective kind of parenting support beginning to sort of look like and evolve into. So I thought we would just start by talking a little bit about what we do know about parenting. What is the quality of knowledge that we have about parenting? And then we'll move on to thinking about how parenting impacts on children and what the various models and mechanisms are for that. And then we'll have a look at, okay, so understanding all of this, how should we understand parenting in the context of children's psychosocial difficulties? Like, what is it that parenting, how is parenting involved here? How is parenting and why is parenting important when we're talking about improving children's developmental outcomes, and particularly in relation to their psychosocial well-being? And then we'll touch on the development of parenting. Have you ever thought about that? How does parenting develop? How do people become the parents they are? Because that has implications for the way we think about working with and supporting parents. Our model or our mental model, our understanding of how parents develop is important in terms of the way we design programs and the way we work with parents. And then if we're working with parents, it's important to understand the social and psychological context of parenting. So how is it that parents experience parenting today? What are the social and psychological factors that come into play in relation to parental help seeking, in relation to when and how parents seek help and what are the things that might get in the way of doing that. And then we'll talk a little bit about parenting support and finally some issues in parenting support. So what are the sorts of things that need to be attended to if we're going to be effective in working with parents? And this material will come from our thinking and our experience and our understanding of the literature, particularly the work we've been doing in Australia, and I'm hoping that that might have some relevance and some usefulness to you. But really happy to take questions and interact as we go, so please don't hesitate to ask a question or to raise an issue. Be more than happy to do that as we go along. Does that sound like an okay kind of plan? Yeah? All right, good. Because I'm not sure what I would have done if you had said no. We want to do something else. Okay, so just really quickly, I won't talk much about us, but just so you know where we're coming from. I'm a psychologist by training. I started in the 1980s, which is unbelievable that I just said that, 1980s. I started working in early childhood intervention, working with families of children with delays and disabilities. And then moved from there into what was then called our primary care division, where I worked on more public health orientated approaches to supporting parents. And then when the Parenting Research Centre was formed, I moved to the Parenting Research Centre, and I've been the CEO there now for about 13 or 14 years. The organisation is a little bit like the CES in the sense that we don't deliver services directly. What we concentrate on doing is working and supporting those who do work and deliver programs to parents. So we kind of see ourselves as a bit of a bridging organisation, connecting kind of research and practice, and making sure that that's a two-way street, where research is being informed by what's being learnt on the ground in practice, and also bringing to practice what's being learnt in research. And so that involves us doing a number of projects and programs where we're trying to enhance the effectiveness of services in working with parents in particular, or working with families generally. And it's in doing that that we've spent a little bit of time thinking about, well, how do you effectively work with parents? So it's sort of like the how of working with parents, not the kind of what. So we're not going to be kind of getting into, this is not a parenting program or a parenting course, we're not getting into what is effective parenting. We're going to be a little bit more meta than that, a bit more like trying to understand where parenting fits and how we might work with parents. Leaving the kind of detail to what you do with parents, really, that's up to you guys. That's up to you and your expertise and your understanding of what parents and children actually need. Okay, let's start by just talking a little bit about, what is the state of our knowledge about parenting. You could say that we've actually been parenting for an awful long time. So we as human beings know an awful lot about parenting anyway. So I'm not sort of talking here about kind of the kind of parenting that we kind of learn just through natural processes and what we've learned as a human race. What is the state of the science knowledge about parenting? Where are we up to with that? And what you might see right from the very beginning is that there is no kind of, I don't think so, at least we don't have in Australia, a university department of parenting. And there's no kind of body of knowledge, a identified body of knowledge that you would say, well, this is parenting. You can go and do your degree in parenting. I mean, we have it in terms of speech, and we have it in terms of physiotherapy, and we have it in terms of health, we have it in terms of lots of different aspects of children's development. But we don't have them in parenting. What is the body of knowledge? And connected to that, we don't have really an identified kind of parenting support profession. There isn't, in the same sense as we have a physio or an occupational therapist or a teacher, we don't generally have a widely accepted or agreed kind of set profession which is about parenting. We certainly have gurus getting about. Do you have parenting gurus here in this country? We have them like every second month. Coming out with a new book about parenting, putting that book out, going and doing doing the talks, getting around the country, and so on. We have lots of gurus, but we don't really have any kind of identified profession that's looking after being a parent. Actually, it's just consider what it's like for a moment being the CEO of the Parenting Research Centre. Being out there in the community, it's something I keep kind of low profile. I've got 4 kids, so when you're out in the community, you sort of keep it low profile because what's the first question? What do you think people do when you say you work for the Parenting Research Centre? Who do you think they look at first? Their kids. So how's that going, Warren? And the funny thing about parenting, that's kind of what is very commonly the experience. And I often feel like a person in a sitcom, and he was actually playing the role of a social worker in an Australian sitcom. He and his family jumped in a car, and they were about to go and visit somebody important, and he turned around and he said to them, "For goodness sake, just act like a functional family for 5 minutes, would you?" And I often feel like that. I hate being called a parenting expert. I mean, what is that? I mean, imagine trying to take a parenting expertise role. I mean, parenting is so broad, it's so multifaceted, it involves so many different aspects of looking after children, from providing a roof over their head, to looking after their nutrition, their health, looking after, even before we get to some of the things that are more commonly thought about or talked about in parenting work, like attachment or like dealing with children's behaviour and so on. It is just way, way too diverse for anybody to be an expert overall. It'd be a bit like saying you're an expert in life. That doesn't make sense really to be talking about being a parenting expert. And this is also important here. We don't have any kind of unifying theory around parenting. There's no sort of set, commonly agreed theory of parenting. Nobody's sort of laid out the conclusive the conclusive kind of curriculum or the conclusive approach to parenting, we're nowhere near that. We don't even have really good theory generally about parenting. Instead, what we have is we have diverse fields of study that are linking different parenting behaviours, attitudes, beliefs, situations and contexts to different children's outcomes. So we tend to know about parenting from the point of view of children's outcomes. So what kind of parenting influences this kind of outcome? What kind of parenting influences children's educational development? What kind of parenting influences children's development in social emotional skills and so on? We tend to have lots of diverse ranges, fields being involved here. So I've got colleagues in Australia who are nutritionists who are interested in the impact of parenting from the point of view of children's eating and children's health. So they're looking at mechanisms, parenting mechanisms, and trying to understand what are the parenting mechanisms associated with children's healthy eating and exercise and so on. So this is the way our state of knowledge looks. It's a patchwork, a really diverse, mixed patchwork where different streams of evidence, often emerging from a child development focus, have informed us about where and when and how parenting is important. Does that make sense? By the way, this has implications for programs because it means what we do with parents is very linked to the kinds of outcomes that we're seeking. And that's why there's no one program fits all, because programs often and almost invariably identify and work on a fairly narrow range of parenting mechanisms and variables. So the kind of program even that might be effective to prevent, say, behavioural problems will be different from the program that's needed if we're looking at, for example, preventing children's anxiety issues. They'll be different because the underlying mechanisms are different, and we'll explore some of those more as we go. All right. Another thing that we don't really have is a definition of what a good parent is. It's certainly not a scientific one. Nobody's been prepared to say, here you are. This is what a good parent looks like. This is how they behave. This is what they think. This is what they do. We don't have that. We don't have a good definition of what parenting, a good parent, actually looks like. What we do have is some more nuanced understandings about what sorts of parenting behaviours and approaches are associated with optimal development, and we also have some information about what kinds of approaches are associated with less than optimal development. But this is, again, more at the level of behaviour, belief and activity, not at the point of, well, can we ever say, here, you're a good parent. And I actually don't think you ever will. We'll never really get to the point to be able to say, you're a good parent or you're not a good parent. It's just a very difficult thing to do. Because parents are a mix, like human beings, a mix of all sorts of behaviours, attitudes and beliefs, some which are effective, some which will be not. And when do we decide that you cross the line from being a bad parent to being a good parent? How do we decide that? It's pretty, I guess, unhelpful in the end, ultimately, to be trying to label people anyway, whether they're good or bad. And one other thing I just wanted to mention about our knowledge about parenting, just to highlight something important, and that is that a lot of our knowledge about parenting comes from comparison studies, where you look at some characteristic, perhaps of the parent or the context or the situation, and you'll look at groups who vary on that characteristic, and you compare those groups. So we might take, for example, say we take parents who have a, see if this thing can work, who have a, maybe not, who have a, say, drug abuse problem, all right? And then we'll compare them to parents who don't have a drug abuse problem. And what we get when we compare those two groups is two overlapping curves, like we tend to get two normal curves. And when we look at the difference between the means on those curves, we'll see there is a difference. So we might see, for example, that children who are being raised by parents who have got a drug problem may differ from children, when you look at the mean, who don't, on measures of maybe psychosocial well-being. Okay. But what group studies often do is kind of hide the variation within groups. So you can see there that even though there's a difference at the means, the two curves are overlapping. All right? And so there'll be as many people in that curve, in the orange curve, who fit kind of more in the normal distribution. All right? So whilst understanding these kinds of things can be very helpful when we're kind of deciding on how we target our programs, how we think about our programs, we have to be careful using it when we're working clinically. Because the person in front of us, even if they have that particular risk factor, may be somebody who falls on the one end of the curve, may not be somebody who's automatically experiencing that issue. So one experience we've had with that is parents with intellectual disability. And sort of automatic assumptions, because a parent has got intellectual disability, that means they must parent in this particular way. But we will only find out how a particular parent parents when we look at that individual in the context, in relation to their child, in relation to what they're doing in that particular context. Does this make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's why characteristics of parents don't tell us necessarily a lot about what they're actually doing. It might actually kind of raise some things we might want to explore, but we shouldn't assume because you have a particular characteristic that you're going to parent in a particular kind of way. So overall, what might we conclude about what the knowledge says about parenting? Well, obviously, lots of research has just reiterated this fact, that relationships matter critically, that development occurs in the context of relationships, so that makes those relationships, particularly the relationship with your primary carer, essential for healthy development. Widely agreed. Next, effective parenting comes in all shapes and sizes. All right, there isn't one way to go about parenting. You look at cultural differences, you look at differences between people who have different values and beliefs. You'll see them parenting in ways that can be effective for them, even when they're looking like what they're doing is quite different. All right, parenting comes in all shapes and sizes. That's why it's important to be focused more on function than form. All right, more than deciding this kind of parenting is unhelpful and wrong, and this kind of parenting is right and helpful. It's more helpful to understand what it is. Why is the person doing that, and what is the effect of that behaviour on their children? What is the effect of that? What is the function of the parent's behaviour is the really critical piece. So if you take something like affection, you might see a mum traditionally using lots of warm, affection, lots of cuddling, lots of being close and touching, and you might see a dad who's using a different kind of affection. It might be the old head rub or the rough and tumble or whatever. Quite different behaviours, but functionally very similar, even though they look different. Functionally, they do the same thing. Functionally, they demonstrate warmth, they demonstrate acceptance, and so on. So function is more important than form. It pays to pay attention to function when we're thinking about parenting. Is that all right so far? That's kind of where we're at, I think, with the kind of knowledge about parenting. So one thing I think we ought to be when we're sort of working with parents is we ought to be pretty humble. There needs to be a whole heap of humility in what we're doing, because in the end, our knowledge base is still even quite limited. Particularly our scientific knowledge base is still actually quite limited.